As I remind you guys about Buckeye State Credit Union. If you haven't heard of them yet, meet your new favorite financial partner. Buckeye State Credit Union is a local institution offering everything from checking accounts to home equity lines of credit and auto loans with some of the lowest rates in Northeast Ohio. Their Cleveland branch is in Shaker Heights, which is one of 5 locations in the state, making it super easy to find one near you. And if you can't get to a branch, no problem. They make it super easy through digital banking. What sets them apart? They make banking personal and convenient. At Buckeye, their focus is you. Their core values, connect, simply, adapt, guide everything that they do. They bring people together, cut through the clutter, and are innovative. To learn more, visit buckeyecu.org. Buckeye State Credit Union. Your money simplified.
All right, we got Danny Cunningham from the Locked On Cavs podcast joining us now. Danny, no one believes me when I try to tell them that the trade machine doesn't work in real life and there are a million hoops to jump through.
It's a little more complicated.
It is. So will you tell them what I've been trying to tell them, that a Giannis deal technically is possible, but about 3,000 things would have to happen before then to make it feasible?
A lot of stuff would have to happen. I think that what the Cavs have done so far this offseason, like in committing more money elsewhere, makes it tougher to do, right? Like signing Sam Merrill and already trading Isaac Okoro's contract, because I think you look at that as, okay, that's $11 million that could be part of that deal that they need to get off of anyways that you could utilize. Well, now that is already accounted for. That's already gone. So it is incredibly difficult to, like, it's fun to fantasize about. Giannis in a Cavs uniform would be awesome. Like, he's a great, one of the greatest players ever, but it's not something I would expect to happen. I know that he's now reportedly unhappy that they cut Damian Lillard after he tore his Achilles in the playoffs, and that might not be the best situation. Like, signing Miles Turner, it makes them better, but they're not a contender now. They're still just kind of a middle of the pack team in the East. So I think that is a situation certainly to watch still.
Are you surprised with how the Sam Merrill and Ty Jerome situation unfolded in free agency for Cleveland?
You know, I wasn't surprised they brought back Sam and didn't bring back Ty. I was surprised Sam got paid more than Ty, as I think everybody here probably was, and I think most people watching and listening certainly were. But I also think with the Ty situation, while the Cavs, could they have offered him that money? Yeah, I don't know if they did or not. But I also think that the other way to look at this is Memphis can offer Ty something that the Cavs couldn't, and that's the opportunity, right? Like, Ty here was not going to be able to play more than 20 minutes a game. Like, that is just what his role was going to be in Memphis. He might not be a starter, but he's going to play, I would guess, more than what he played in Cleveland. He's going to have an opportunity. And two, this is a shorter contract for him, for somebody who really hasn't gotten paid like that in the NBA. He's going to be able to go out and have the opportunity to maybe have 2 good years in Memphis and hit free agency again while he's still in his prime. And I think that's a big deal for him too. So I look at this as more about the opportunity that the Cavs couldn't offer rather than the money that I think they could have offered. I think there's a legitimate discussion about whether they should have tried to give that money to him as opposed to Sam Merrill. But I also think that if you watch what they're doing this offseason, they're prioritizing two-way players, guys that can't necessarily be played off the floor, because Ty is not a good defender. And we all think of that Indiana series as, well, he just missed every shot that he took, and he did. But the bigger reason he couldn't play in that series is whenever he was on the floor, the Pacers were just attacking him. And Isaac Okoro, teams just were never going to defend. We have seen him in 5 postseason series. How many of those 5 teams that the Cavs played defended him seriously? None of them, right? So that they've basically traded, I think, 2 one-way guys and Sam Merrill, of course, is not a trade, like he was already here, but with 2 guys that they feel can play on both ends of the floor. And I think that's kind of the way to look at this.
So when you look at, obviously, the trade for Lonzo Ball, and you talk about how Ty Jerome only had the 20 minutes, do you think a healthy Lonzo, that's a big thing,
right,
can he be more effective than what Ty Jerome was? And do you think he has that same 20 minutes spurt?
So I think given like his health issues in the past, 20 minutes is probably about where you would want Lonzo Ball, right?
Yeah.
Like, you don't want to wear him down, because if he's ready to go in the playoffs, that would be a really good thing for the Cavs. The way I look at this is what you define as effective, I think, changes a little bit. He's not going to be the scorer that Ty was. Like, Ty was just a microwave that came off the bench and was able to light it up against backups, and that was something that I'm going to guess none of the 4 of us expected to happen before the season started last year. Like, that just all came out of nowhere, right? Lonzo's not going to be that. But the other thing that I look at with that acquisition is for the Cavs to get to where they want to go to next year. Like, if we are talking about 12 months from now, the Cavs as either NBA champions or a team that went to the finals, we're probably also talking about how Evan Mobley was the best player on the team.
Yep.
And I think that the one thing that Lonzo can do that Ty didn't necessarily do is I think he'll make Evan Mobley better. I think he is somebody that when those two are on the floor together, and there were a lot of lineups that had Ty and Donovan and Evan in them, if you put Lonzo Ball in them, I think that's going to put more on the plate of Evan Mobley, but I think it's going to make him be a better offensive player in a way that he needs to be for this team to get to where they want to go.
He needs those opportunities. And that, I don't want to say encouragement, but Ty took a bunch of shots.
He did.
And he shot efficiently last year. It wasn't a bad thing, but a guy like Lonzo, who is a pass first, play make first, everyone else eats before I eat kind of player, into those lineups. And it's going to force feed Evan to be a little more aggressive and be a little more assertive and open up some more playmaking opportunities for him in those same lineups that should, and once again should if Lonzo's healthy, because that's a giant if he's played 70 games in 4 years total, have plenty of spacing for him to operate as the primary big as well.
And the other thing, I mean, you know this, you've been around a lot. Like Kenny Atkinson talks all the time about wanting this team to play with a lot of pace, right? Well, when you think of Lonzo Ball, that is what you think of. You think about getting up the floor and going. Not to say Ty didn't do that at times, but that wasn't Ty's game. Like I think Ty was so effective because he played at a slower pace than it felt like anybody else in the league was capable of playing at times in the way that he got into the paint. So I do think that this is something that maybe stylistically is going to fit what Kenny Atkinson wants to do. Like we hear so often, Kenny talks about how much he loves Sam Merrill. I would bet that we're going to hear him say a lot of really positive things about a healthy Lonzo Ball, if that's the case.
What are they going to do? What do you think their approach is to this next year? You look at the fact that, you win all those games. They've been a good regular season team. Donovan alluded to it at the end of the season, like, y'all going to be on us all year. How do you think they respond? Because right now, the energy from the fans is like, yeah, you better prove it. Like, we're not trying to hear none of that. Like, and that could be a little, it could be a little different because when you're on the other side of it and the fans, it's like, oh, this is a great, love them. We even talked about, hey, we don't even want LeBron back. This team, we love the way, and now it's like, it's a different point of view. Like, nah, you're not going to fool us again. You have to show us.
Right, so I look at this as like last year, in my opinion, was the most fun regular season team the Cavs have had probably since the 08-09 team that won 66 games. That was LeBron's second to last year in Cleveland in the first stint. This next year is not going to be like that. Like this is going to be, they're going to have big wins. They're going to go through stretches where they're going to lose 4 in a row again like they did last year. But every big win that they have, it's going to be like, oh, well, we need to see it in May, right? We need to see it. This team do this in the second round of the playoffs, in the conference finals, in the finals. And the Cavs, I do think, understand that. As you mentioned, Donovan Mitchell spoke about that an hour after they were eliminated to the Pacers. They are going to be
too.
At length, yes, very passionately as well. They're a team that they have to go out and prove it in the playoffs. There's not a thing that they can do in the regular season that you look at and just say, yeah, we really believe in the Cavs because they did this in March. That's just not going to be a thing that happens. They're going to have to do this in April, which they've done. They've gotten out of the first round. There are no issues there. But they're going to have to do it in May and June. And I think they're capable of doing it in May and June, but until they prove that they can get out of the second round, I think there are going to be questions about whether or not they can.
When you look at this, all the moves that they've made, and you look at this current roster, where do you think they can go to keep improving it?
So I do think, and I know you guys were talking about this earlier, I do think they need to add a little bit more size, like a third big. I don't know if Tristan Thompson's going to be back or not. I would imagine if he wants to play, which it sounded like he does at his end of season availability, I would imagine that there will be a spot for him. But I wonder if Larry Nance Jr. could be available as somebody that could be a third big. I do think that Atlanta trading for Kristaps Porzingis probably complicated his situation a little bit. But when you get to that, the Cavs can only offer guys like that a minimum salary. Yeah. And once you are a minimum contract guy, it's really difficult to stop being a minimum contract guy. And guys don't want to be minimum contract guys. So I do think that we'll kind of have to wait for them to get to that point in free agency to a lot of the money is dried up. And then that's when the Cavs can start kind of, making waves in that area. Maybe there's a trade out there. I don't know. I think they should be listening on Jared Allen. I don't know what offers for him would be, but that is the one guy that I look at and say I'm not so sure that he is a guy that you necessarily need to have in May and June, the way that you could reallocate some of that money elsewhere. But I think those are really the ways they could get better. But I also think that we kind of lose sight of just how good this team was, too. They won 64 games. The playoffs didn't go as imagined, obviously. But I don't think that they need to get a lot better because while there are other teams in the East that have gotten better, There's not a team I look at in the Eastern Conference and go, they are better right now than the Cavs. There's not a team that I say that about.
I was going to actually kind of ask what you just mentioned. FanDuel updated its Eastern Conference odds this morning. The
Right.
Knicks have surpassed Cleveland as the favorite at plus
I think
280.
that flipped again during this show, actually, because
Oh.
I looked right before I came in. I
Then
think the Cavs are favored.
Maybe
again.
this slipped again.
Because I checked this morning, too. The Cavs were favored yesterday. I checked this morning, it was the Knicks, and then before I came in, I checked again, it was the Cavs, I think.
Despite the fact FanDuel is the #1 official sportsbook of the Ultimate Cleveland Sports Show, use promo code FanDuel.com/UCSS. I did not look at FanDuel during the show, so if it did flip,
Right.
they're close enough that I guess it's a toss-up. Jason Lloyd has said and continued to say, the playoffs were a historic collapse, but it's only a historic collapse because of how good they were in the regular season. Losing the second round is losing the second round. It happens to one seeds more frequently than I think a lot of us want to admit. The Thunder lost in the second round to the Mavericks last year. Go on, they make a slight trade, Giddey for Caruso, sign Hartenstein, win a championship. Do you think the overreaction, let me rephrase that. Do you think the reaction to the playoff loss has been an overreaction considering how good and successful they were in the regular season, or because it's kind of the same story we've seen in back-to-back postseasons now?
How many backs was that?
3 backs.
Okay.
There is a little more validity to the criticism they're facing.
So I think you have to be able to separate it, first of all, from the previous postseasons, because I look at what happened in this postseason where they lose in the second round in 5 games, and it's the same results as what happened the year before, but that team was never going to beat the Boston Celtics. Like, they were not nearly as good as that Celtics team, right? So I don't think it's fair to blame them for not getting past the team that won the title that year when that team was basically what the Cavs were this year. I think calling this postseason a complete failure is absolutely fair and true because that's what it was. But I also look at this, and we made a big thing immediately after it ended, that injuries can't be an excuse. Injuries can't be an excuse. And to give the Cavs credit, not once did anyone that spoke make the injuries an excuse. But then when you start to think about it, it's like, okay, well, Donovan was playing through that calf injury that I thought was pretty apparent watching him play. Darius needed to have surgery 5 weeks afterwards because he still wasn't healthy. Evan Mobley was in a walking boot during the series. Like, their 3 best players, whether we want to admit it or not, were all kind of playing on one leg at certain points. And there, again, no excuse. The Pacers outplayed them. The Pacers did everything I expected the Cavs to do in that series. The Pacers did it better. But I also think that you have to look at this and say, okay, did this team lose because they weren't good enough, or did this team lose because they were unhealthy at the wrong time? And the answer is probably somewhere in the middle. But I do think that we lean to just, they weren't good enough. And I know that there's a pretty significant section of the fan base that wants to trade Darius Garland. I just would not be in that area right now if I'm the Cavs. I think that he's got a lot of room to grow still.
Same.
So I do think that it has been a bit of an overreaction because just about everything that could have gone wrong for them went wrong for them at the wrong time. After a season where, for the most part, from October until April, basically nothing went wrong, and that's why they won 64 games.
And Indiana also played out of its mind the entire postseason and took Oklahoma City to a Game 7 in a way I don't think anyone could have anticipated. When the playoffs started, if I had told any of you guys, we're going to get a Game 7 Thunder-Pacers finals, you would have laughed me up. And rightfully so.
You
but
said Thunder and 6.
That's why they play
I
the
did say
game.
Thunder and 6.
Now, I would agree with that, except for the fact that I have the Knicks series the previous year.
Oh my God.
So if you would tell me the Celtics, yes, the Celtics were favored in that. But the Cavs this year were favored in this series. They had some injury issues, right? But then you go back to the Knicks series, the first year, they just got beat up and bullied and pushed around. Now my thing is this: I would love to say that the Cavs are a better team, and at points in time they were, but these teams right now are getting better. I like, we talk about the jump that the Cavs are going to get. Now I think we believe Evan Mobley is going to take a jump, but when you got Paolo Banchero and Wagner, I like what they did. I like them going to get banged. I like the fact that they've done some things. Now they got a defensive team that can really play physical and do some things. I like the Knicks roster. They just got Jordan Clarkson. Mikey points out that they don't have a coach. That's a thing too.
Does matter.
That kind of matters.
It is valid.
But do you believe the Cavs, long story short, the Cavs can, as constituted, if they didn't do no more changes, no nothing, you could see them in the finals next year?
Absolutely, yes. I like what the Magic have done a lot too. And I know they signed Tyus Jones earlier this morning or last night. I don't remember which. But I don't look at that. I look at what they have, and they have a lot of good guys, but they don't have anyone that can set them up. Like, they have a lot of, and they don't have the shooting that you also, I think, need. Desmond Bane, a great shooter, but Banchero's not a three-point shooter. Franz Wagner looks like he has forgotten how to shoot a basketball despite being really good still. Like, it's crazy the hitch that his shot just developed. So I look at that, and I think that you can, and you can do this with the Cavs too, but I think you can poke holes in every single roster of a contender in the Eastern Conference, whether it is New York, who, as you mentioned, does not have a coach, and it sounds like Mike Brown, old friend of ours, might be the head coach there for the Knicks. You can do it with Orlando. You can do it with Atlanta, and I really like the offseason that they have. Nickeil Alexander-Walker, I think, is going to be awesome for them. If Jalen Johnson can stay healthy, he's going to be a star for them. Kristaps Porzingis, the 25 games that him and Trae Young play together are going to be great. He can't stay on the floor.
If you get 25.
Right. But, like, you can poke holes in every single team that thinks they have a chance to win the East. You can poke holes in their roster. Like, if you want to talk about Milwaukee, if you want to talk about Detroit, all of these teams, none of them are flawless. I think on paper, and the games are played on hardwood, not paper, and I understand that. But on paper, I think the Cavs have the most complete team in the Eastern Conference right now.
Let me ask you this. What is your starting lineup for the Cavs next year? I'm asking for G. Bush.
I would.
Got you, bro.
With the roster constituted as is, or are we talking?
Yeah, right.
Okay. I would have DeAndre Hunter in the starting lineup.
Thank God! Some Cavs folks. Thank you, Mr. Cunningham.
That is the direction.
You're now on the Christmas list. You didn't even know it. You didn't even know it.
That's the direction I would go. I think that they have, from the time LeBron left until they acquired DeAndre Hunter, they were looking for DeAndre Hunter. They had not had a 6'8" wing that can shoot, that can kind of be an isolation player, that can defend, that can do everything that he can do. And I do understand why they didn't have him in the starting lineup last year. I think it's really hard to sort of assimilate yourself into a team in the middle of the season, especially from when you go in a situation like Atlanta where they're fighting to be a play-in team to now your whole life gets turned upside down in about 48 hours or so, and you are now, okay, we have to go win a championship. Like, that's a big shift.
Yeah.
And trying to learn all that and be in the starting lineup, I think, is a really tough ask. But I do think with a full offseason, with a full training camp, that is where I think it makes more sense. I don't know if that's what the Cavs are going to do. I bet the Cavs don't know right now if that's what they're going to do, and they don't have to because it's July 1st and they don't play a basketball game for a while. But if I were Kenny Atkinson, that's the direction that I would go with their starting lineup.
I actually agree with him, by the way.
You have said that.
I told you before.
He just wants to be on the Christmas list.
I've been taken off and put back on the Christmas about 50 times since the show started. But speaking of the bench, Danny, we kind of talked about this earlier in the show with losing Ty Jerome. The Cavs are now betting on a lot of internal development from guys, and when you look at the bench, they don't have a ton of playmakers on the bench. I mean, Lonzo, when healthy, giant if. Craig Porter Jr., not a shooter. Good ball handler, good creator. You're hoping Merrill can maybe add something to, there's a depth chart. You're hoping Proctor can go from second-round pick to contributor. You're hoping Jalen Tyson can take that next step forward. But outside of Donovan and Darius, in the backcourt 2-3 wing, grouping, there's not a lot of proven playmakers. And I do think that is a little bit of a concern now, where you'll probably miss Ty Jerome the most in this situation. Where do you see them making up for that lack of creation that Ty did provide, even if he had some shortcomings as well?
Even if it was mostly creation for himself, because I do think that's part of it. I actually think they missed a lot of what George Niang and Karis LeVert provided in terms of playmaking for other guys. Like, they were ball movers in a way that DeAndre Hunter wasn't, and I don't think Ty Jerome was. This for me, almost everything with this team is going to get back to Evan Mobley. So I look at what he needs to do this offseason. I think he needs to tighten his handle because I think he needs to be able to go get himself a bucket a little bit easier. And if he does that, I think his playmaking, which he is a good passer, and he's been a good passer even if his assist numbers don't necessarily show, but he's been a good passer since he came into the league. I think if he tightens up that handle, if he's somebody that you can give the ball to and let him go create for himself and others in ways that we haven't necessarily seen him do often enough so far in his career in Cleveland, I think that's where that next step could go. Because if you think about where the Cavs were at in terms of their rotation, like him and Donovan would check out first and then they would play in that second unit. That's where I think you could get some of that more creation. Lonzo Ball be on the floor too. Like that, I think he brings more creation if he's healthy, which again is the biggest if for this Cavs team because
We're
of
going to
his
say
injury
that
history.
3,000 times.
I said it on my podcast. I felt like in a 30-minute podcast, I felt like I said it 35 times the other day. But if he's out there, he's a better creator than anybody on this roster other than Darius Garland. And I think he's a much better creator, not for himself, but for others than what Ty Jerome was.
Yeah, to me, I looked at the jump. Now, I will say, his jump, if you look at his numbers, the numbers ain't crazy different from last year to the year before. I look at the bigs, and I'll be talking about it all the time. Like, I want to see the 25. I need about 25 and 11.
From?
Mobley.
Oh.
We talked about it. LaMarcus Aldridge gave me them points. Vin Baker, give me Chris Webber. I need somebody.
David West.
David Weston gave me 22.
Those were empty teams, like empty calories.
I
man.
didn't think I'd hear Vin Baker.
Vin Baker.
You never know what you're getting.
You never know. Listen, if you get, I mean, Chris Gatling had a couple good years. Bro.
I didn't think I'd hear that one either.
Had a couple good years. I need him to be, like you said, I need him to develop a pet shot. What is your money maker? What is it going to be? Is it going to be a jump hook left, jump hook right? Is it going to be a fadeaway on the block? What is it going to be? Something where you say, oh, Mobley got it in the spot. When they say get to your spot, what is Mobley's spot?
The elbow.
It's a fair question. Do you think we have an answer right now?
I don't think we have an answer right now. I think he likes to have the ball in certain spots, but I don't think the left elbow is one that certainly comes to mind. But when he gets the ball there, I don't think you necessarily know, okay, he's going to 2-dribble left jumper or get to the basket. Like I think is doing different things from that one spot. But the other thing with Ty Jerome leaving that I think about, like if he's going to get to 25 points a game, he's probably going to need more shots than he took last year. And Ty leaving and being replaced with Lonzo, who Lonzo is not going to take the same volume of attempts that Ty did. Some of those shots can go to Evan, and that is part of the way that can get up there, because I do agree with you. I think that when he's at his best, he is aggressive. I just think that there need to be more times where he is aggressive, right? Like we have seen him have these big games in certain spots, and we saw it in the playoffs 2 years ago against Boston where he was awesome in that series, even though the Cavs were very much inferior to what the Celtics were at that time. But he was aggressive, and that's what we need to see more of from Evan.
Caitlin Clark, not the Caitlin Clark, the basketball player, the Caitlin Clark who covers Caitlin Cooper, covers the Pacers. Caitlin Cooper does a great job covering the Pacers. Did a breakdown of when Tyrese Halliburton made his first shot versus missed his first shot. Did you see
crazy, his number
Do
difference.
you have any idea, and I literally was thinking about this as you were talking, does Mobley, do you think, follow a similar split to that? To where his aggressiveness, if he makes his first shot, and I go back to like that Charlotte game where he had all those threes, where if he hits one early, if like something in his head just clicks, and I could do the research and start looking.
I have no idea, but now I feel like I'm going to have to look into it. Like I feel like that's going to be the rest of my week now, is I'm going to have to just go back and look at all of Evan Mobley's game logs to see what he did with his first shot attempt.
We'll
but I know exactly the story that Caitlin wrote that you're talking about. It's a great piece of investigative journalism, we'll call it. But like I could see that being the case with Evan, and part of it too. I guess the difference between that with Halliburton and that with Evan is Halliburton has the ball in his hand so much more. So sometimes with Evan, it's not always his fault. Now, you can always put at least a little bit of blame on him for not being aggressive enough and getting the basketball. But as I mentioned, with him needing to tighten up his handle, until he does that, he's going to need somebody to get him the basketball more frequently than Tyrese Halliburton does. So that's why I think it's a little apples to oranges, but I do like that thought process.
You got one more? We got time for two more. I got one last
one. No, go ahead.
Tyrese Proctor, the Cavs' second-round pick in last week's draft, falls to 49. I don't think a lot of us expected him to be there at 49. Ends up coming to Cleveland. I know you had reported that he may have been telling teams, kind of stay away.
He was definitely telling teams to stay away. Don't draft me.
How do you think he fits
Proctor was doing that?
Yes. That's. I think that this is.
What?
Yes.
The Cavs had a fully guaranteed roster
multi-year roster spot. He's going to be on the real roster because so many guys after, I don't know if it's like 42, 43, 44, 45, but like in that range, they start to get two-way contracts. And guys don't want to be on two-way contracts. And the Cavs have the second-round exception as a way they can spend money as a second-apron team. And they had a roster spot for a second-round pick building this team. And they like Tyrese Proctor. And I don't know where he would have gone, but I do know that his people told teams, do not draft us. But they had something figured out. Obviously, it was with the Cavs. I don't know how many teams they told, but I do know they told teams that because I don't think he would have fallen to 49 had it not been for that. And we don't know what he's going to be, but I do think that that is a smooth way of maneuvering, and I think that this might be a problem with now the draft being 2 days in the NBA because teams have 18 hours between the end of the first round and the start of the second round to work out a lot of this stuff, and they didn't have that before, so I wonder how that has changed things.
We got one more. Now, you already on the Christmas list. No pressure. Now, we be laughing all the time. Will Emoni Bates stick somewhere in the league? I've had it. Mike, we talked about it. I say, bro, he plays for the Cavs. It's hard to find minutes. But if you play for the Hornets, or you play for the Kings, or you get with the right place where they can let him learn, figure it out, get in the rotation possibly, does he stick, or do you see him playing overseas?
I mean, it was about 10 minutes being on the Christmas list. I'm guessing I'm going to be off now because no. I don't think that he is, and I like Emoni. I thought he had a lot of upside coming out of the draft. I think he's a really good shooter, but that's all he is a really good shooter. He's not, to me, in watching him, and I've watched him in person several times between Summer League, going to charge games, all that stuff. He's not athletic enough to play in the NBA. He's not an explosive enough athlete to be in the league, and he's not a good defender. He's got shorter arms. He's a really good shooter, but that's really all that he provides, and he is not good enough at that one skill to be somebody that's worth having on a full NBA contract. I wouldn't be shocked if he's somewhere else in Summer League. It's not going to be with the Cavs. I wouldn't be shocked if he's on a Summer League team. Wouldn't be stunned if he gets another two-way, but I think more likely than not, his basketball future is playing in a league that's not the NBA.
And making a ton of money overseas. That is Danny Cunningham from the Locked On Cavs podcast. Daily, correct, Danny?
Every day.
Every day, if you want 30 minutes of Cavs content outside of UCSS, you should be listening to Danny on the Locked On Cavs. He's just